an anti-abortion bill got a lot of traction on social media. I remember seeing a lot of this and being like, what is this? I'm sure you were thinking the same thing, kind of maybe seeing these messages about it on social media. So for people who don't know about it, what is this?
Okay. So it's called House Bill 1232. And what it does is propose a constitutional amendment to put in our state constitution something that says life begins at fertilization. And so that would mean that people would get protections starting when, an embryo is created. Because it's a constitutional amendment, it would have to go through, it would have to pass with a supermajority in the legislature, and then it would have to go to the public for approval. That's how all constitutional amendments work. And obviously it would be put on the ballot, and more than 50% of North Carolinians would have to approve it. The bill says that you could defend a life. It's very, there are a lot of things, a lot of details missing in this bill, but it says that you can defend life potentially with deadly force. It doesn't say that you can go, kill someone in the name of protecting a fertilized egg, but it very well implies it. And so people have jumped to some conclusions about that.
Yeah. And you noticed that there were some social media posts that were not exactly accurate about this.
Right. So it's so funny. Being at the legislature, our NC Capitol team is always so focused on what's coming up and what's being voted on. And then when we saw this, it was sort of jarring. We said we had to sort of take a step back and say, what is this woman talking about? Which bill? Oh, this one that isn't ever going to go anywhere. But it got a lot of traction because it was there was an influencer named Jen Hamilton who I had never heard of, but who has a giant following. She has millions of followers on Instagram and TikTok. She's based in North Carolina. She has a book on the bestseller list. It's called Birth Vibes, where she talks about it. And she reads, a lot of her post was just reading from the bill itself. But then at the end, sort of toward the end, she says, you could murder someone for using birth control. And the bill doesn't explicitly say that. It obviously says, life begins at a fertilized egg. You can protect life at the moment of fertilization, but it doesn't mention birth control. So we're left to sort of read between the lines and determine, what does the bill sponsor mean by this? And it's just one guy. His name is Keith Kidwell. Mm-hmm. He's a Republican from, I believe, Beaufort County. And he lost his primary election recently, so he's on his way out. But he said that is not the intent of his bill. There's a different co-sponsor that took his name off the bill, actually, who said people had been misinterpreting it. But it was sort of an educational experience for some of us, including me.
Yeah.
When because this being the dumb white guy that I am, I was like, how does birth control work? How many of them allow fertilization to happen?
Yeah.
And so that's what prompted the fact check is like, okay, when does fertilization happen, and which forms of birth control stop it altogether, and which forms allow it to happen, but then like prevent the pregnancy from taking place in other ways.
Wow. And so you were looking at that because you have this prominent influencer and other people, I'm sure, getting up on social media kind of, talking about this bill, but it also not exactly pointing to maybe the true, cause behind it and the true nature behind it.
Right. When I saw that video, I wondered, okay, will this bill explicitly state that birth control is illegal? It doesn't.
Right.
Will it, what does it say? Does it define fertilization? It doesn't. And so the scientific understanding of and consensus of the definition of fertilization is when the sperm meets the egg and an embryo is created. That's fertilization. Analysts in the reproductive rights circles said, hey, there have been some anti-abortion groups that interpret that differently. And so because the bill does not define fertilization, it's possible that hypothetically, if this bill were to become law, North Carolina lawmakers could write their own definition of fertilization, because it doesn't say, fertilization is when this happens. It's just sort of left unanswered and undefined, which I think scared a lot of people. But you're right. As you pointed out, the bill doesn't explicitly ban birth control or say that people could kill someone on birth control.
Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't say that, I mean, what does Kidwell say is the intention behind this bill? What did he maybe mean by this?
We asked him that.
Yeah.
His legislative assistant sent us a very short email that said something to the effect of, Ms. Hamilton is misinterpreting the bill. Her claim is inaccurate. Representative Kidwell has no further comment. Okay. And that was it. And so we're left to sort of read between the lines of what it could mean or what could potentially happen. But the gist is it, defines life at fertilization. Under a scientific definition of that term, most birth control would be allowed, whether it's intrauterine devices, IUDs, birth control pills or patches. The woman in the video, Ms. Hamilton, said she has an IUD that allows fertilization but prevents implantation of an embryo. And so she worried that this bill could affect her birth control. I don't know what brand that is.
Yeah.
But in my research, and again, not claiming to be an expert at all, I'm just reading things from like the American, group of OBGYNs and things like that. They say that the most common form of IUDs are hormonal IUDs, and those do prevent fertilization. But there are some, like the copper kind, where an egg can be fertilized, but it can't attach for life to grow. So with all that said, under a common understanding of the word fertilization, most birth control would be allowed. But because the bill doesn't define fertilization, researchers said, hey, lawmakers could come up with their own definition and potentially, try to outlaw forms of birth control if they wanted to.
And I could see how, especially people who are taking these medicines. I mean, when you get this medicine, they don't tell you, yes, this will allow for fertilization. No, it won't. I don't think that's probably talked about when people are choosing to take that route. And so I'm sure maybe hearing these kind of buzzwords, right, probably scared people.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And that's what one of the analysts said. This researcher, her name is Mary Ziegler, who Politi-Fact speaks with a lot. I asked her, I said, how ridiculous is this claim? And she said, well, it's not entirely ridiculous because a lot of people don't understand how, not only how birth control works, but how fertilization happens. And if you look at across America, who makes the majority of the laws, it's older men who maybe have never researched how all this stuff works. So if you're a woman and you take birth control and you hear that those men, not pointing on either side of the aisle, but just older men will be writing the laws, I'm sure that's terrifying.
Right. And I'm sure that played a role in the, kind of Politi-Fact fact-checking process. But I think, as you mentioned earlier, your team was saying this is not going to go anywhere. How did you know that? What led y'all to believe that before the messaging, came out and kind of got all the public attention? That's
one reason we wanted to fact check this, because there's a part of Hamilton's video where she says, something to the effect of, look at this. This is happening. And so she may have just meant this is happening in terms of this bill was filed. But people could get the wrong impression and think that this bill has a chance to become law. When really, Kidwell is he's an interesting figure in the legislature, and he's not seen as someone who authors a lot of bills. He's, in fact, introduced similar bills in recent years that have gone nowhere. And so when we saw his name on it, he's the only sponsor on it now. And the fact that it didn't get a hearing in committee, we pretty much knew, we being our NC Capital team, probably wasn't going to go anywhere. That said, we still wanted to, be double and triple sure that we could say that with authority. So we asked House Speaker Hall, who's a Republican and holds a ton of power over which bills even get a vote on the House floor. We asked him, hey, is this likely to come up? And I'm paraphrasing him, but he said, no. He said, other than Kidwell, I don't think there's any member of our caucus, meaning the 71 Republicans in the House, who wants this to go forward. He called it, quote, not a serious bill. And so we wanted to be sure to get that information out there just so people don't freak out. It's always good to raise awareness about what lawmakers are trying to do.
Yeah.
But we also don't want people to lose sleep or anything like that if they don't have to. There are a lot of bills that will affect your life. This one won't.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to share that context. While someone might scroll and see a video saying this is happening, yet if we're able to provide the context of, okay, given the history and given what has gone before when it comes to things like this, the likelihood of it ever going anywhere is slim to none. I think that's definitely important. You mentioned that the co-sponsor has removed their name.
Yes.
Have we heard from that person?
He posted a statement on Twitter, and I think some people might be able to say this was because of attention raised by Ms. Hamilton. Shortly after, I think it was within a day or two of her video, a representative named Ben Moss, who's another Republican, initially had his name on it and then took it off, put a statement on X or Twitter, whatever we want to call it, saying, hey, I'm pulling this off. The intent was to show how dedicated we are to protecting the unborn. People are misinterpreting our intent to mean that we want to, I forget his exact words, but punish women when he said that was not the case. And because of that, he's pulling his name off.
Interesting.
And people can go find that. It's still up right now. I think it's something like Rep. Ben Moss. It's a lengthy statement. I can't remember everything he said, but the awareness that Hamilton raised may have played a role in him taking his name off the legislation.
Totally. When it comes to, obviously going through the legislature, you and the NC Capital team are saying this is probably not going to go anywhere. But even if it did go through the legislature, it would have had to clear another hurdle because it would be a constitutional amendment.
Right.
So that's another stopgap there, it seems
and
like.
That's something that Hamilton didn't include in her post or her video. She doesn't mention, that even if lawmakers had passed this bill, it would not have automatically become law. It would have gone to the ballot in November. We could have all voted on it, and then it would have been up to the public to determine. We live in North Carolina. It's a swing state. In statewide elections, we've seen Democrats win. We've seen Republicans win. Polls show that people are deeply divided on abortion and where the laws should be. So I imagine something like that probably wouldn't pass.
You mentioned Kidwell lost his primary. You have the co-sponsor remove their name. Any chance of anyone else kind of taking this up or maybe adding something to it to potentially, I guess, show it off again and then try to get it through again?
First off, I don't think Kidwell didn't lose because of that, because he introduced this. He lost for other reasons. People introduce a lot of bills at the legislature on behalf of advocacy groups. And that goes for Republicans and Democrats, and these bills don't have a chance of going anywhere. But they do it so that the groups that support them, either with campaign donations or otherwise, to show them like, hey, I'm sticking up for your cause. And it's completely symbolic. And so I do imagine that some bill maybe similar to this will be introduced again. But as long as Speaker Hall is still in control, it sounds like if it's written the same way, authorizing deadly force against someone, potentially against someone who has a fertilized egg or who is, potentially on birth control, like that's not going to move forward. One more thing I will say. This week we saw, speaking of bills that won't go anywhere, Democrats in the state Senate held a press conference where they introduced legislation that, if enacted into law, would protect North Carolinians' rights to in vitro fertilization, IVF, which a lot of people use to get pregnant, and the right to contraception. Tennessee, run by Republicans, has a Republican governor. They just passed that into law. And so, when we talk about messaging bills or we talk about what else people are going to do, Democrats are going to see legislation like what Kidwell put out. They're going to see others, and they're going to introduce their own bills and say, hey, because of that, we feel the need to protect your rights. Now, as long as Republicans have control of the House and Senate, that bill probably won't go anywhere. But, they point out, similar bills passed in pretty red Tennessee. It was led by Republican women. Why can't we do that here? You never know. Maybe next year, if there's more balance in the state legislature, maybe you see bills on the other side of the aisle move forward. You just have to wait and see.
Yeah. Anything else that you want to share about the Politi-Fact, the fact-checking process with all of this? I'm sure it was lengthy, and you have to provide context and talk to doctors. Anything else that you want to share about kind of the back end of all this?
Sure. Sometimes at Politi-Fact, we get accused of picking on people, whether it's lawmakers or otherwise, or people on social media. But Politi-Fact has some standards for choosing who to fact check and why. And in this particular case, we weren't trying to pick on Jen Hamilton. It's just that her post, she has, millions of followers on TikTok and Instagram. And her post was seen by, last I checked, like 250,000 people. And so my colleagues in Tampa, which is where Politi-Fact is based, saw it and said, you should do this. You should look into this. And at the time, I had no idea if it was true or false.
Yeah.
Her video was, I believe, over a minute long. And so I watched it, and then after watching it, compared it to the bill, and then just wrote up where it was accurate and where it wasn't. And that's sort of how it goes. And then editors here at WRAL, the NC Capitol editor, and editors with Politi-Fact look at it and approve the language we use and how we're going to present it. And that's sort of how it works. This is not an opinion piece at all. This is a story or a fact check, if you will. It doesn't have a rating of true or false, but it's something that we put a lot of research into and that a lot of eyeballs saw before we put it on our website and we put it on Politi-Fact's website. And that's sort of how it works.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. I know it came across my social media feed, and I remember being like, anytime I hear any kind of political speak, not coming from either a legislator themselves or, someone who holds official office or a reporter, I think the wheels should start spinning, and that's why it's so important that we have Politi-Fact.
Yeah,
so,
I think so too.
Yeah, well, thanks for doing this. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. And you can find more stories like this from Paul on our website. Go to WRAL.com and go to the Politi-Fact page.